Hello YouTube, I'm Tom, and in today's video I'm going to show you all the exciting things I've been getting up to recently with a material that isn't new at all, but as far as I'm aware, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm the first person on YouTube to try cutting it on the Cricut. If you've not come across it before, foamed PVC, or Foamex, is a rigid sheet material that is incredibly versatile for making all sorts of things. There are a lot of videos on YouTube covering its general attributes, so I won't go over them all here. But after trying out sheet styrene, I was on the lookout for something similar, but thicker and easier to cut on the Cricut. And when I discovered that you could get Foamex in 1mm thicknesses, I decided to give it a go, and boy am I glad I did. I got my Foamex from 4dmodelshop.co.uk, and I'll pop a link in the description if you want to try it out. I initially tried out the 1mm and 2mm, although I was very dubious about the 2mm. It turned out I was correct, and I highly recommend you don't try to cut the 2mm on a Cricut. For the 1mm, I found that 4 passes at max pressure with a deep cut blade was generally the right balance of matte preservation and decent cuts. I think it's worth pointing out here that the cuts you get aren't what you'd call super smooth, like you might get from a laser cutter. And, unlike a laser cutter, the cut you get is ever so slightly beveled due to the shape of the deep cut blade. So I had an understanding of how cutting worked on the Cricut. And you might think at this point I'd try a few simple things to get me started. And although I did do a few test cuts, this is not what happened. Instead, I almost immediately decided to make something massive and complicated. The something massive and complicated in question was a sump vessel, inspired by some flavour text from the N95 sourcebook, pages 58 to 59. I had always been fascinated by the Moby Dick-esque story of Captain Valgotha, hunting raft spiders on his slime drifter the Hydra. I'll give you a little read from it at the end. I had drawn up some designs to cut from serial card, but had been put off by the sheer effort it would take to build up thicknesses and strength for something that big. I'd done some of the legwork design-wise based on a smaller skiff I'd made from serial card, but with the new material in mind, I started in Illustrator drawing up the plans. It took me quite some time to feel confident enough to get cutting, but eventually I just went for it. When the first sheet came off the Cricut, and my cat-like reflexes saved my camera from the floor, I was still sure I'd made a terrible mistake and wasted a whole bunch of time and effort. But part of me still believed. I soon discovered removing the sheets from the mat did require a little more caution than expected. Luckily, I didn't break anything and took more care on the subsequent sheets. As you can see, some areas cut all the way through and some were hanging on by a thread. Another thing to mention here is the softness of the Foamex means you do need to be a little bit careful, as even relatively short fingernails will mark the surface with a bit of pressure. Even though Foamex is very easy to cut, the volume of the parts meant quite a lot of prep. This was mitigated by my excitement to see if my crazy plan would work. Each time I had a few corresponding parts freed, I stopped to push fit them together, and the more I did this, the more I felt confident things would be okay. Once done, the parts took up my entire A2 cutting mat. I did a very quick dry fit, then got really excited and bust out the superglue. 4D Model Shop recommended thin gap-filling superglue, so that's what I used. As it turned out, and you'll see later, this had some drawbacks. The bond the superglue makes with Foamex is amazingly strong and very fast, and this speed was my main issue. The construction was a bit fiddly, and the superglue gave me very little time to get things in the right place before setting. Even though I could tell this wasn't the perfect solution, raw enthusiasm kept me going. That was until I accidentally glued the side of the ship to the base plate. Some colourful language and an angry moment with my scalpel removed the offending glue joint, and the side was reattached where it should be. My process for gluing larger models is now to initially use quick drying wood glue. I use Gorilla Wood Glue. This gives enough short-term stick while fiddling parts into the correct place, and great removability if something has gone terribly wrong. The Foamex is quite smooth and non-porous, and with the wood glue alone, it only takes a little effort and the joint will come apart even once fully dry. So once the glue is holding everything in the right place, and I'm happy, I go around reinforcing all the joints with a little gap-filling superglue, and I get the best of both worlds. I was super happy with my results, even with a small hole from the incident, and I set about making a very basic steering wheel and getting that glued in. It was at this point I lost all self-control and decided to take what I'd learnt so far and make a working crane. You know, to haul the raft spiders aboard. So that's what I did. My original drawing for the vessel included a crane, so I knew where to start. The plans were drawn and cut on the same day, and the next chance I got I began assembly. This time using the 2-glue method. In fact, I used plastic glue for the styrene rods and tubes, so 3-glue method. It was extremely fiddly but came together just as I had planned, and when it was working I spent longer than I'd be happy to admit just playing with it. As you can see, I made a harpoon launcher, added studs, grilliput details, and some repair plating, partially to repair the actual hole I'd made and also to add hull detail. I was so happy with the material and the way I could use it, I decided to keep going and make a few other things. The first of these was a fan boat. Again, I ended up drawing it really quickly, taking my experience from the slime drifter and creating an improved design. Which, along with using multiple glues, meant the fan boat flew together, even though I clumsily snapped off one of the fan blades, taking it off the cutting mat. Next were some smaller boats which came out really nicely. I then moved on to a few other non-boaty ideas I'll give you a peek at. These are some working doors for some other corridor/dungeon type terrain. Very happy with how they worked out, although the bases could be a little more generous as they are a bit wobbly. I think they'll look really good painted up to match the walls in the set. Next, I decided it'd be fun to design and make some park furniture and bins. Again, super happy with such little things. And finally, let's have a look at the whole fleet together. Now, I know they're a little lacking in detail compared to something bashed from GW kits or 3D printed, and I know that making them with maximum playability in mind does sacrifice some aesthetics, but I'm happy with the balance, and can't wait to see them all painted up. Let me know if you'd be interested in seeing that and I'll make a video. If you fancy it, stick around for some bonus footage from my cereal box skiff, and a read from the Captain Volgotha story. If not, I hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time. Call me Kruthnak, the outcast, only survivor, may the gods forgive me, of that ill-fated slime drifter Hydra. It seems now a lifetime ago since we set out upon the toxic Sump sea in the black heart of the hive to hunt the savage raft spiders of the underworld, their eyes diamonds of purest white shot with crimson, are much prized by the masters of the spire. We churned across the many-hued effluent, where violent swells released gaseous flaming balls that rose into the overhead caverns and lit our path. The captain, Hagen Valgotha, had not left his cabin since we set forth, but we heard in the silence of dog watch heavy footfalls from within. Many days passed before we spied our first brood, their grey bodies skimming the filthy depths in the distance. At the sound of our cries, he walked onto the greasy deck, his presence filling us with dread. Valgotha, a giant of a man, hair red as blood, face a tissue of scars, dressed in black but for the gleaming white spider fang that made his right leg. He glared at each of us in turn, black, soulless eyes glinting in the half-light. With a scream of triumph, he held above his head a diamond of exquisite beauty, a diamond that was to be our doom. "Men of the Hydra," he said, "men of the Hydra, in my hand I hold the key to a life of riches, a life beyond your wildest dreams. This crystal will give you everything. Never again to feel the beast of work at your back, never again to feel the pain of an empty belly, never again an empty bottle. For this diamond, the very Lord's Helmor will fall at your feet, and all I ask in return is the hide of one spider. But, my lads, a very particular spider." We hung upon his every word, mouths open, eyes wide as he spoke. "The beast I speak of is white. Yes, she's the last of the white mares of Aran. And, oh by the gods, she's big. She'll cast a shadow on your souls, a dark shadow. The thing is covered with the scars of ratskin harpoons, yet no man has put her under. I myself came close once, but she took my leg. I, in return, took a fang and this bauble." He held towards us the diamond, tempting each man with its glittering surface. "Some say this was a fair exchange, I say not. I want her hide, so mark my words and mark them well." At that he drew himself to his full height, cruel fire burning in his eyes, and said, "Are you with me?"